1987, three of us got together and we formed a company called Rand Consolidated Investments, and we hoped the market would confuse it with Johannesburg Consolidated Investments, because then you get a good start that way, which it did. So we started with 10,000 Rand capital, and that would be about 100,000 Rand in today's money. We had one employee, a secretary, and the three partners were G.T. Ferreira, myself, and Paul Harris. We were in our late 20s. We looked something like that. You can see the ravages of age. And our main activity was providing project finance for local authorities in a very tax-efficient manner. And we didn't draw salaries for 9 months. There was simply not enough money. So then I fast forward 37 years. This is where we are now. And this is only the banking side of the group. I'll get to the other later. And we no longer have one employee. We've got 38,000. We've got total assets of 895 billion. We're on our way to a trillion. A trillion is 1,000 billion. People don't always appreciate that. And the value of the FirstRand Banking Group on the stock exchange is 233 billion. Now, the journey from 1977 to 2014 included a number of big takeovers, and we also had a few major startups. So in 1984, we purchased RMB, Rand Merchant Bank, from Johan Rupert. So Dr. Rupert needed Johan to come back to Remgro, and we needed a banking license. So we acquired a controlling interest by selling RCI, Rand Consolidated Investments, to RMB in exchange for shares. It's called a classic technique of reverse takeover. And that technique we used throughout our history. So we achieved strong organic growth, but we realized that merchant banking profits or investment banking profits are very volatile. So we liked the profile of the profits of a life insurer. So in 1992, we got the opportunity to acquire Momentum. So we did exactly the same technique. We took RMB, which now included RCI, and we sold it to Momentum in exchange for a controlling interest. But this now was, I think it was 1992. We also realized that this was the dawn of the new South Africa, and that foreign banks would enter South Africa, and we guessed correctly that it would be Citibank, Deutsche Bank, etc., rather than retail banks. And their target market would be the big corporates and parastatals, Telkom, SAA, etc., which was exactly the target market of RMB. So we set ourselves the goal of entering the retail banking market. That was just a goal at that early stage. So in 1998, Momentum realized that Southern Life, which was the third or fourth biggest life insurer at the time, was ailing. And it belonged to Anglo American. So we approached Anglo American to acquire this. And they were busy rationalizing all their non-banking interests and sticking to resources and mining. But there was a little tail to this. So they insisted and said, no, if you buy Southern Life, you must also buy FNB. Now, this looked like a bridge too far for us at the time. But it fitted our strategy exactly, because we wanted to go into retail banking, but it just came a bit soon, and it was much bigger than we thought. So we maybe had 4,000 employees at that stage, and Southern Life and First National had 25,000. So it would have been a case, it was in fact the case of a goldfish swallowing a whale. Okay, and part of the whale had indigestion, which was Southern Life. But we thought it was a unique opportunity, and we'd never get an so we closed our eyes and we made an offer for both of them. Same technique. We sold Momentum, RMB, RCI in exchange for shares. However, we needed 5 billion Rand extra to make the transaction work. So we were able to raise this in one day, because I think up to that stage we had a very good track record, and we'd built up a lot of trust in the market. At the time, it was one of the biggest mergers or takeovers in the world. It wouldn't be today, but at that time. So FirstRand was, sorry if I check that, so FirstRand was born, and I'll get to the next one, and it comprised FNB, RMB, Westbank, Momentum, and Southern Life. So those were the takeovers in that period, but we also created brand new companies. Now, none of the other big banking groups, insurance groups, start things from scratch. Okay, they don't do startups. And why? Or very few of them do it, let's put it that way. It's very difficult initially, and your profit that you make from the startup is almost minuscule in relation to a big group's profit. In 1992, a young actuary, Adrian Gore, who worked for Liberty Life, walked into my office, and he was said keen to purchase a dormant life insurance license. So I said, what do you want to do with it? And he sketched these plans, and I thought it was pretty ordinary and not very innovative or exciting. So I said, no, we don't want to sell it. I never thought I'd see him again. A year later, he made another appointment, and he said he wanted to go use the license to do health insurance. We knew nothing about health insurance, but he described the product for me, and I really thought this is something special as this built-in savings account. So I said to him, you've got to resign from Liberty, and you can do a business plan, and I'll pay you for 3 months, and then if you don't like the business plan, well, then you're on your own. You go and work as an actuary again. Anyway, the rest is history. We gave him a 10% shareholding for nothing, because remember, at that stage, 10% of nothing is nothing, because we knew nothing about health insurance. And so if we look now, Discovery, that's what we started with, at 10 million, okay, and today it's worth a market cap of 56 billion. Oh yes, I must add that he brought in a colleague of his, also actually, Barry Schwartzberg, and he also got 5% for nothing. So Discovery today has got 9,500 employees, and it operates in England and in China. And interesting, its market cap is much bigger than Liberty Life's, where Adrian started. Could show you what a person can achieve. Then in 1990, I go back a bit, we owned a short-term insurer called Aegis. So Aegis has a similar business model to Santam, and I hope there are no employees there, disrespectful, but it works through brokers. And we thought that's not a very satisfactory business model. They own all the data on the client for marketing, underwriting, etc. So we decided to sell Aegis, and we decided to start a direct insurer. Now, the driving force behind the establishment of OUTsurance was 2 former employees of Aegis, and it was Willem Roos, a young actuary, and Howard Aaron, an IT guru. The 2 initial innovations on which OUTsurance was based was the out bonus, you always get something out, and highly scientific underwriting by very, very competent young actuaries. So now, OUTsurance unlisted, but its estimated value is of the order of 25 billion, and it has 4,000 employees. It is also commenced doing business in Australia 7 years ago, and it's taken a lot of money, 1 billion rand, and a long time, but we're now making money there, and we write more business, OUTsurance writes more business in Australia, new business, than they do in South Africa. And in a month or 2, it'll commence doing short-term insurance business in New Zealand. We already have 250 people on the ground in New Zealand. Then, in this sort of timeline that I gave you, we unbundled Discovery and Momentum. You got those shares for free. And we sold FirstRand's insurance interest, which had 45% of OUTsurance. We sold that to RMI. So the structure of the group now looks as follows. The controlling interest of more than 50% in RMI and RMB is held by Remgro, Royal Bafokeng Holdings, and the original 3 founders of the group. RMI owns 25% of each of Discovery and MMI, sorry, just have to, and 83% of OUTsurance. The other 70% of OUTsurance owned by the management team. And this principle of our management teams owning big slices of our companies is a strategy which we follow, and I'll say more about that later. On the banking side, RMB Holdings owns 34% of FirstRand Group, and is its largest shareholder. FirstRand in turn owns 100% of FNB, RMB, and Westbank and Ashburton. Ashburton is a new fund management company we've started. Now, if you want to summarize our success in a soundbite of 4 words, that is it. It's traditional values, innovative ideas. Now, when we acquired RMB in 1984, we got a former university friend, Ernie Hubert, to develop a strap line or payoff line for RMB. And he proposed those words. And we asked him why. Where does it come from? He says, that is what I observed. And it's true to our DNA 30 years later. Traditional values, innovative ideas. Now, that was just background, ladies and gentlemen. I'm now going to talk a bit about our corporate culture. And it's based on those 4 pillars that you see. And I'll start with values. Now, in the lobby of RMB, there's a book called the RMB Book of Rules. It's in a glass case. And if you open the book, the RMB Book of Rules, every page is blank. And on the inside cover, the following words are written. It says, at Rand Merchant Bank, we've always been guided by a strong set of values. And because we trust our people to live by those values, we've never needed a book of rules. In our experience, rules and doing merely what is expected of us always seems to lead to sterile thinking and unimaginative solutions. So, of course, we've got rules. But that book symbolizes that we think values are more important than rules. And all of us who have children know you can't have a set of rules for your children to cater for every situation. You give them values, and then they will deal with every situation according to their value system. Now, why value so important for a big group? The reward is trust. So we take trust for granted, all of us. You buy an airline ticket, you think the plane has been properly maintained and the pilot's properly trained. You make a deposit with a bank, you assume we're going to pay it back, or you trust we'll pay it back. So we take it for granted. And for a group like ours, we like to think we enjoy a great degree of trust from our shareholders, clients, regulators, etc. And it's an enormous asset of immeasurable value. The truth is, of course, you can't exist without trust. Same way as the human body cannot exist without oxygen. And values and trust are indivisible from each other. The next pillar is innovation. And I'm going to give you 3 little case studies to illustrate different aspects. Firstly, in a formal hierarchical organization where your staff haven't been liberated, it's very difficult to bring in innovation in a meaningful way. So in 1992, when we acquired Momentum, it was very hierarchical and formal. They freely admitted that they used to copy new products rather than develop them themselves. So we needed a culture change before we could even begin with innovation. So what did we do? So the first thing we did there to break down barriers, we built a graffiti wall, physically, with spray cans and all. So this allowed staff to go and spray messages and frustrations on the wall. You know, the chairman is clueless or something like that, which happened to be me. Okay. Proved to be very popular. Then we dispensed with formal parking because it's offered a status symbol. You know where the CEO parks? Next to the lift. That's where he parks. So we did away with that. So Momentum's chief executive had to hunt for an empty parking bay the same as everybody else. Then we tried to do away with formal titles, and your business cards describe what you do, not your status. So it said head of marketing, not assistant general manager marketing. Then we encouraged first names from top to bottom and a more informal dress code, do away with suits, all to break down these barriers. And it was very successful. Today, Momentum is a very innovative company. The second case study, different approach, was First National Bank. There, Michael Jordan introduced a company-wide innovation program. And this year there have been 1,755 entries in 3 categories: small, normal, and mega innovations. Oh, sorry, I've gone too far. I need to go. Did I go back? Okay, so they're the different categories, and the prize money available for innovation is 5 million rand per annum. And the winning team gets R1 million, and the sort of minor prizes are about 50,000 rand. Almost all the prizes are won by teams. It's very rare that innovation is ascribed to individual. And there are a few of the R1 million winning innovations. The best one is the Steve campaign. Now the annual prize giving and awards ceremony is extremely important because it's a gala evening. It's somewhere between a rock concert and the Oscars, all right? And I'll give you a bit of a flavor. I hope it comes over. Now, those of you, it was quite rapid, but those of you that are observant would have seen that those teams are demographically very, very representative. It wasn't always that way. In fact, we're very proud over the last 5 years that we've achieved this, and it's been a very good demographic progress. And has the competition been a success? Absolutely. First National Bank received the award last year as the most innovative bank in the world. Now the third case study is Rand Merchant Bank, and RMB has a similar sort of competition to FNB. They actually learned it from FNB, but it's limited to support personnel, back office, because if you're a merchant bank and you're in the front office and you're dealing in the mergers, acquisitions, per definition, you have to be innovative, all right? Otherwise you won't survive. Now, yes, I want to tell you a wonderful story now about last year's winner of RMB's Innovation Award. So it's got a bit more of a narrow focus, as I said. So that gentleman's name is Feta. He's about 22 years old. He grew up in a small town in Swaziland, and he has an exceptional mathematical brain. So fortunately, his parents saw this early, and they worked extremely hard and made a lot of sacrifices to give him a good education. And he obtained a master's degree of applied mathematics from the University of Witwatersrand. Now, what did he do to win the R1 million prize, Feta? So we've got sophisticated computer models that price derivative instruments, afgeleide instrumenten. And they take quite a long time to get to the price because they're complex instruments, often about 9 minutes. So what Feta did was, he looked at this and he thought he'd like to shorten this calculation time. So he used the software that his PlayStation uses for games, and he converted it everywhere. Anyway, he brought down this calculation time from 9 minutes to 5 seconds. And we think it's worth about 160 million rand present value to the bank. So the technically correct, because I'm in an academic environment, technically correct description of his innovation is a Monte Carlo simulation engine for pricing derivatives. Okay? But he's a really humble man, and at the prize giving, they got a standing ovation, and I sort of get a knot in my throat just thinking about it. And there wasn't a dry eye in that room when he stepped up to collect a R1 million prize. And it's after tax, mind you, we pay the tax. And he's only 22 years old. Now, I can't think of one example where, I can think of one, My Way, which is opposition here, Rene Otto, founder of My Ways here. But banking groups and insurance groups generally don't, as I said, establish new companies from scratch, buying the first pencil. Firstly, A, it's very risky. B, it takes many years before it makes a meaningful profit contribution. And D, and most importantly of all, is the people that can do that are very, very scarce. The Howard Aarons, Willem Roos's, and Adrian Gore's. So we're very proud. Okay, now, sorry. So we're very proud that Adrian Gore and Howard Aaron, both of those two groups, 10 years apart, have won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award out of one group. And just to give you an idea of the previous winners of that award, Brian Joffe, Patrice Motsepe, Koos Becker, Stephen Saad of Aspen, etc. So I think the most important principle, and as a group, we're able to create space for entrepreneurs to thrive and to achieve their dreams. But just to demonstrate, Outsurance and Discovery, they weren't just innovative at their start, they still are. So every year, Price Waterhouse produce, or every second year, a report on the banking and insurance industry in South Africa, and which they rank the companies on different aspects. So in the category of innovation, they're still there. Discovery, Outsurance, and Momentum is position 5. So in the insurance, we've got 3 out of the top 5 positions. Marketing, which is also requires a lot of creativity, Discovery and Outsurance are 1 and 2 there. So maybe a bit to highlight our philosophy regarding entrepreneurship and venture capital. So starting, we think small is beautiful. Companies, like babies, are not born big. They're born small. Number 2, we believe, just like babies, we believe in little incremental steps, and we don't run before we walk. And number 3, and I think this is probably the most important thing, if you are the leader of a small, successful entrepreneurial company, our group, you get as much respect and admiration as if you were running a billion-rand division. You're a hero, even if it's still very small, but we celebrate entrepreneurs in our group. Then the 4th cornerstone of our culture is the FirstRand business philosophy. So one of the most important foundations of our philosophy is an owner-manager culture. We simply think that if you own something, you deal with it differently. So here's a short extract from our business philosophy video, and the CEO of RMB talks about an Avis cars to illustrate the point, a hired car.
If you want to test this, just think about the car rental industry. How people drive and look after their own cars versus how they treat a rental is a big difference. And you can go and ask those rental companies how people look after their cars. Not well.
Right, now it's impossible in a group of our size to make everyone owners. And our people know this. But one of the members of top management summarized it very succinctly when he said to the founders, he says, "You treat us like owners." Now, so important do we think that this owner-manager culture is, that, and I'll tell you now about how we try to entrench it, because the 3 of us have handed over the operational management, day-to-day management of our group to professional managers. So the 3 of us, GT, Paul and myself, sold 400 million rands worth of our shares to the top 6 executives of FirstRand on very favorable terms. The loan was repayable after 4 years. That's been done, and I think they've all more than doubled their money. Now, it was a very successful decision because it triggered a switch in their heads. It threw that switch from manager to owner. Now, Tsogo's son, the company, has tried the same recently, did a deal of 200 million with their top 5 executives, and they've got an enormous amount of criticism. Why? Because the finance was provided by Tsogo's son. In this case, the finance was provided by Paul, GT, and myself. So we did it for the long-term good of the company, and we bore the cost of that, because the profit that the guys have made, we have not made. Okay. But it didn't attract a single word of criticism, because, as I said, we bore the cost. We didn't burden the company with that. And our top echelon at FirstRand now have a very meaningful part of their net worth invested in the group. In fact, it's their biggest single asset. And what's the effect? They think like owners. Now, the second part of our business philosophy, we've got a very federal model. So the best way to think of it is like the USA. Every state has its own identity, own culture, own budget, own bank laws, when you can drink, when you can drive. However, and so they're very independent. However, they all have one foundation, and that's the US Constitution, with principles such as democracy, free enterprise, law and order, independent judiciary, free press, etc., enshrined in that Constitution. So our companies are similar to the 51 states. They're very independent. They have their own brands, own cell phone policies. I wouldn't have a clue what OUTsurance's or FirstRand's cell phone policy is. Who flies in the front of the plane, who flies in the back of the plane. It doesn't matter, as long as it's not abused. But we have one foundation. We have one treasury, which is the custodians of the group balance sheet. We have the FirstRand philosophy, that's our constitution. And we even have a defense force like the USA. It's called risk management in the center. So central government, that's where I sit at the moment. So we have to ensure that we live our values, strong balance sheet, meet our financial goals within prescribed risk limits, and the most important of all, by far, is we must create a milieu which attracts talented, hard-working people who want to be rewarded for innovation and initiative, and where they can reach their full potential. Sort of at the end of all my career, I sort of think, what did we do? That's what we did. We created the right milieu to attract the right people. And I think one of the greatest compliments I've ever received was when our top executive said to me, says, "This is my spiritual home." And that sort of said it all to me. So regarding our people philosophy, this is sort of the traditional organization structure. You get very important people at the top, not so important people in the next layer, and not important at all people at the bottom. And then, as you know, good news or information trying to go up or down gets filtered. It's not very effective structure. So we turn it on its head. So we prefer that type of structure, flatten it, and we have shorter communication line. We're also not afraid to give young people responsibility. Michael Jordan was 36 when we appointed him CEO of FNB. Adrian Gore was 27 when he started Discovery. Willem Roos was under 30 when OUTsurance was started. I see the government has adopted the same policy, and President Zuma's daughter. I can just say it works. So another differentiating feature of our group is that we have more than one horse in a race. Now, this is not what they'll teach you at Gibbs, that I promise you. You know, you don't allow your companies to compete with each other. We do. So if you look at Discovery, OUTsurance, and Momentum, the MMI, all three do life insurance, all do short-term insurance, and MMI and Discovery both do health insurance. We just think it sharpens their competitive ability, but we have one condition. The company competing in that event must have the capability of playing in the first league. You must be a first league player, otherwise we won't allow you to enter that market. And you must be capable of coming 1, 2, or 3. Then a further cornerstone of our philosophy is the business case prevalence. So what is that? It's simply we take things on decisions on business principles. Nothing else matters. No office politics, no bias, no prejudice is allowed to go. We take, as I say, just use business principles. I tried that on the council of Pretoria University, and then June Sinclair said to me, "Mr Dippenaar, a university is not a business." Okay. So luckily I'm talking about what I know. So I'm really quite pleased if I read about office politics at a competitor, because it's a destructive force, poor morale, poor decision making, and not very good at all. Then another element of our culture is no holy cows, right? In any group or big institution, there are those things that you are not allowed to talk about. And in our case, we say you can talk about anything and challenge everything. So here's a little example. When we bought FNB, they had a house in London to save hotel expenses for the people going over. But then what happened, the chairman of that time, he liked London in the summer, in the season. So he'd move in there, and then nobody could stay there, you know, because he and his family are there, and he's there for 6 weeks, the season. And of course, then where do they have to stay? In the hotels. So I mean, it defeats the whole object. So everybody knew this, and it had been going on for years, but you couldn't talk about it. And then we said, no, you can talk about this. Tell us. And okay, then it all bubbled to the surface, and we sold the house, okay, because it's not working. So in summary, our corporate culture, we think, has been a major determinant in our success. It is appealing to employees. They like it. It's informal, it's non-hierarchical, entrepreneurial, innovative, empowering, and it's attractive to employees. So we do attract a lot of talented people. Our grad program at RMB this year, there are 20 places, there are 3,000 applicants for that. So if we now look at this, I must now say, well, you might well ask, how do we know it's been successful? So I'm going to give you a financial perspective. Now, if we go back to 1992, and I'm working with the top company, because that's where some of the insurance companies sit. So we go back to 1992 when RMB Holdings was listed, and the growth in the share price, including dividends, and it's about 21 years, I think, is, okay, the growth is 28% per annum compound. So if you put in 10,000 Rand in the shares in 1992, it would be worth 2.15 million today. Now, to give context to this, if you also invested 10,000 Rand in the JSE's all-share index at exactly the same time, it would be worth 333,000 Rand today, 17% compound. So you would have done 6.5 times better investing in this share than buying the index. Now, I would like to end on a positive note and demonstrate that this success of the group has not been limited to the so-called traditional shareholders. In terms of our BE transaction, previously disadvantaged groups will benefit generously from this success. Now, we're very proud of our BE transaction. And you would have gathered here, we weren't available to do a BE transaction where a few politically connected people became billionaires. That did not believe in that. So our BE transaction is truly broad-based, and the value will be unlocked at the end of this year. That's 10 years, after we implemented. Okay, let's look at the big picture. How much value is being created? 20 billion Rand. So now, what can you do with 20 billion? You can buy virtually the whole of the PSG group. You can buy control of Pick n Pay, and you can buy 70% of Telkom. And a year ago, you could have bought all of Telkom and had some change. Okay. So I'm just trying to say it's a lot of money. All right. But it is, the examples I gave are theoretical. So who will share in this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? So we've got 3 empowerment partners. We've got the investment company of the National Union of Mine Workers, NUM. Okay, and the shares of that company are held by a trust, and that trust is for the benefit of the mine workers. And the trust of the mine workers investment company, they give scholarships to the children of miners and help them with school fees, etc. Then there's the Giza Trust. They work closely with provinces to improve the education of our country. And Women's Development Bank, they focus on helping women in rural areas establish micro-enterprises. So they put in a very modest amount of money to the deal, about 81 million, and 81 million is now almost 10 billion Rand. Then the next big shareholder is the FirstRand Empowerment Trust. This again is a charitable organization. It's headed chairman of the Board of Trustees is Sizwe Nkosana, our CEO of FirstRand, and the objective of this trust is to make a difference in education in South Africa. So you can see there are not many charities that are endowed with 4.5 billion rand. So they can distribute about, we think, comfortably 250 million rand a year without ever eroding the capital base. Then we've got another trust for our own staff to assist them with university fees and school fees. Sorry. So this assistant, I must spell out, goes to previously disadvantaged employees, our ACI employees. Then we did not forget our black board members. They collectively own shares of 400 million, and the amount each board member will get is dependent on the years of service. So I think the biggest amount is 36 million for a board member who's been there a very long time. And then we didn't forget our own staff members. So we've got 13,800 ACI employees, and they own shares to the value of 5 billion rand. How's that allocated? So there are almost 400 who will receive shares to the value of R1 million or more. 718 between $500,000 and $1 million, and so it goes down, and at the most junior level, between 10,000 and 50,000 rand. And your allocation depends on your seniority and years of service. So I'm not too optimistic that they'll all keep the shares. You know, history proves they have other needs. But obviously we would like it because it entrenches this owner-manager and owner culture that we have. So that's the end of my story, and I'm happy to take questions.